The $1,000 sat on the table like a loaded gun, and Nora Blake's trembling hand hovered just inches above it, knowing that whatever choice she made in the next 60 seconds would either save her life or destroy it. But let's go back to where this nightmare truly began. Nora's feet screamed with every step across the sticky restaurant floor. 11 hours into her shift and the fluorescent lights above flickered like dying stars, casting shadows across the empty tables of Sal's diner. This place sat in the worst part of the city, where sirens were just background music and people learned early to mind their business. The vinyl booths were cracked, the air smelled of burnt coffee and desperation, and Nora fit right in. She wiped down table 6 for the third time, her mind calculating numbers that never added up. Rent was due in 4 days. Her brother Danny's medicine cost $217 she didn't have. The electricity bill sat unopened on her kitchen counter because seeing the amount wouldn't make the money appear. 23 years old and Nora felt 50, worn down by a life that took more than it ever gave back. Table 9 needs clearing, her manager Frank barked from behind the counter. He never looked at her when he spoke, just issued orders like she was part of the furniture. And move faster. You're not paid to daydream. Nora bit her tongue. Jobs were replaceable, Frank reminded them daily. There were always 10 desperate people waiting to take your spot. She grabbed her tray and headed toward the back corner, but then the door opened and everything changed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Salvatore Morelli walked in alone, and every head in the diner either turned away or dropped down. The cook's hand froze mid-flip. Frank's mouth closed mid-sentence. Even the old man who came in every night and never spoke suddenly found his coffee incredibly interesting. Nora had never seen Salvatore Morelli in person, but she knew him. Everyone in this city knew him. The newspapers called him a businessman. The streets called him something else entirely. He owned half the city, controlled the other half, and people who crossed him had a strange habit of disappearing. He wore an expensive black suit that probably cost more than Nora made in 6 months, and his dark eyes swept across the restaurant like a predator checking for threats. He chose the corner booth. The worst section. Nora's section. Frank grabbed her arm so hard it hurt. You serve him. Don't mess this up. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look at him too long. Just do your job and pray he leaves a good tip. Nora's heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the table. Her notepad felt slippery in her sweating palms. This was wrong. Everything about this moment felt wrong. Men like Salvatore Morelli didn't come to places like this. They had private chefs and expensive restaurants where senators and judges ate at their tables and pretended not to know who they were dining with. What can I get you? Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Salvatore didn't look up immediately. His phone was pressed to his ear and his other hand gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles went white. She caught fragments of the conversation, words that made her stomach twist. How bad? I'm coming now. Don't let anyone near him except the doctors. No one. When he finally looked at her, Nora saw something she never expected to see in the eyes of a man like him. Fear. Raw, genuine human fear. Coffee. Whatever food you have ready. His voice was rough, distracted. He was already looking back at his phone, typing frantically. Nora brought the coffee in 90 seconds. The kitchen threw together a sandwich. Salvatore didn't touch either. He sat rigid in that booth, making call after call, and Nora heard enough to piece together a story that made her own problems feel small. His son. Teenager. Some kind of attack. Hospital. Critical condition. 20 minutes later, Salvatore stood abruptly, threw 2 20s on the table for a $12 meal and stormed out. The door slammed behind him and the entire diner released a collective breath they didn't know they'd been holding. Nora approached the table on shaking legs. She picked up the 20s ready to clear the untouched food, and that's when she saw it. A white envelope, slightly open, revealing a thick stack of $100 bills. Her hand froze. Her breath stopped. Time seemed to stretch and bend around that envelope. She glanced up at the security camera above the booth, the one that had been broken for 3 weeks despite Frank promising to fix it. No one was watching. No one would ever know. Nora grabbed the envelope and stuffed it into her apron before her brain could catch up to her hands. She cleared the table mechanically, her movements robotic, and carried everything to the back. In the dim storage room, behind boxes of napkins and industrial soap, she opened the envelope with trembling fingers. 10 $100 bills. $1,000. More money than she'd ever held in her life. Holy hell, what did you find? Jenny, another waitress, appeared behind her like a ghost. Her eyes went wide when she saw the cash. Did that guy leave this? Nora couldn't speak. She could only stare at the money that could solve everything. Danny's medicine. The rent. The electricity. Food that wasn't expired. Maybe even a doctor's visit for the cough she'd been ignoring for 2 months. He's not coming back for it, Jenny whispered, urgent and excited. Men like that don't miss $1,000. It's pocket change to them. But you. Nora, this could change your life. He was right. Nora knew she was right. Salvatore Morelli probably had 100 envelopes like this. He wouldn't even notice it was gone. He had bigger problems tonight. His son was fighting for life in some hospital and $1,000 was the last thing on his mind. But Nora kept seeing his face. That fear. That devastating human terror of possibly losing a child. She thought about Danny, about sitting by his hospital bed 2 years ago when the pneumonia nearly took him, about the helpless horror of watching someone you love suffer and being unable to stop it. The money suddenly felt heavy. Wrong. It wasn't mine, Nora heard herself say. He left it by accident. Jenny's face shifted from excitement to disbelief. Are you insane? Nora, you're about to be evicted. Your brother needs medicine you can't afford. This is a gift from the universe and you're going to throw it away because of some moral high ground that won't pay your bills. Every word was true. Every word was logical. Every word made sense. Nora put the money back in the envelope. I have to return it. Frank exploded when she told him she was leaving early. His face turned purple and spit flew from his mouth as he screamed about responsibility and consequences and how she was fired. Effective immediately, get out of his restaurant and don't come back. Nora walked out into the cold night air wearing her stained uniform, carrying an envelope full of cash that could have saved her, and having no idea where to find a mafia boss in a city of 8 million people. She started asking questions. Carefully. The homeless man who sat outside the diner saw everything. For $5 he told her which direction Salvatore's car went. The bodega owner 2 blocks down saw a black SUV speeding toward the hospital district. A taxi driver mentioned seeing a convoy of expensive cars at St. Catherine's private wing. It took Nora 2 buses and 40 minutes to reach the hospital. By then her shift at the diner would have ended anyway, but she no longer had a shift. She no longer had a job. She was gambling everything on returning money to a man who could make people disappear. The private wing entrance was guarded by 2 men in dark suits who looked like they crushed concrete for fun. They stepped in front of Nora before she got within 10 feet of the door. Lost. The bigger one's voice could have stopped traffic. I need to see Salvatore Morelli. I have something that belongs to him. Something important he left behind. They laughed. Actually laughed at her. This tiny waitress in a stained uniform clutching an envelope like a lifeline. Sure you do, sweetheart. Move along. Please. Nora's voice cracked. She was exhausted, terrified, and past the point of caring about pride. He left this at the restaurant. He was upset about his son and he forgot it and I need to return it. Please. Just tell him the waitress from Sal's diner is here. Something in her desperation must have registered because the smaller guard made a phone call. He spoke quietly, listened, then looked at Nora with new suspicion. What's in the envelope? Money. A lot of it. 5 minutes later, she was being escorted through pristine white hallways that smelled of antiseptic and expensive flowers. They passed private rooms with closed doors and reached a waiting area where Salvatore Morelli sat with his head in his hands, looking nothing like the feared boss who'd walked into the diner. He looked like a father drowning in fear. He lifted his head when Nora entered and confusion crossed his face before recognition clicked. The waitress. Nora's hands shook as she held out the envelope. You left this. At the restaurant. I thought you might need it. Salvatore stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. He took it slowly, opened it and counted the money with movements that grew increasingly sharp. When he looked back at Nora, his expression had transformed into something dangerous. You brought this here? To return it. His voice was deadly quiet. No one returns money to me. What's the trick? What do you want? Nothing. It wasn't mine to keep. You expect me to believe you tracked me down, lost your job, came to a hospital surrounded by my men, to return money you desperately need? He stood and Nora realized how much bigger he was, How much power radiated from him even in grief. People don't do that. Not in this world. Not to me. I just wanted to do the right thing. Nora's voice was barely a whisper. Salvatore studied her face like he was reading a book written in a language he'd forgotten. The silence stretched until Nora wanted to run, but her feet stayed planted. "My son," Salvatore finally said, his voice rough with emotion he was fighting to control, "was shot 4 hours ago. Ambush outside his school. 16 years old, and someone put 3 bullets in him because of who his father is." Nora's heart broke. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You know what that's like? Sitting here, powerless, while doctors fight to keep your child alive." "Yes." The word came out raw. "My brother. 2 years ago. Pneumonia. I sat in a waiting room like this one and prayed to gods I didn't believe in because prayer was all I had left." Something shifted in Salvatore's expression. A crack in the armor. "Keep the money," he said quietly. "You need it. I can see that you need it." "I can't. It's yours. I'm telling you to take it. And I'm telling you I can't." Nora stood her ground even though her legs felt like water. "I didn't come here for a reward. I came here because it was right." They stared at each other across an impossible divide of wealth and power and circumstance, and for just a moment, they were simply two people who understood what it meant to be terrified for someone they loved. "Go home," Salvatore finally said, "before I change my mind about how remarkable I think you are." Nora left the hospital with empty pockets and no job, but she slept that night with a clear conscience. The next morning she started looking for work, knowing it would be harder without a reference from Frank, knowing she'd made her life infinitely more difficult. She believed she'd never see Salvatore Morelli again. He was wrong. 3 days later, 2 men in suits appeared at her apartment door. Nora's heart stopped. Danny was home, still weak, and she positioned herself between him and the strangers. "Mr. Morelli requests your presence," the taller one said, handing her an address written on expensive cardstock. 1 hour. "It's not a threat. It's a thank you." Nora arrived at a downtown office building that touched the sky. The top floor belonged to Salvatore, all glass walls and leather furniture and a view of the city that made her dizzy. He stood by the window, looking healthier than he had at the hospital but carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "My son is recovering," he said without preamble. "The doctors say he'll make a full recovery. I'm so glad. I had my people look into you. I hope you'll forgive the invasion, but I needed to understand who returns $1,000 when they're 3 days from eviction." He turned to face her. "I know about your brother. About your job. About the medical bills and the debt and how you've been surviving on nothing but determination." Nora's face burned. "I don't need charity." "Good. Because I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job." He slid a folder across the desk. "I own several legitimate businesses. Restaurants, real estate, security firms. All legal, all clean. I need someone I can trust working in one of them. Someone who understands what honesty means even when it costs everything. You don't know me. I know you better than most people I've worked with for years. You chose honesty when fear would have been easier. That's rare. That's valuable." He paused. "Stable salary. Medical coverage for your family. Safety." The offer was impossible. It was everything she needed and nothing she deserved. "Why?" "Because you gave me something no one else could. Hope that decent people still exist." His voice carried an edge of something broken. "And because I'm about to clean house in my organization and I need people around me I can actually trust." Nora took the job. Not because she wanted anything to do with Salvatore's world, but because Danny needed medicine and hope was a luxury she couldn't afford to refuse. Her new position was in one of Salvatore's restaurant management companies. Legitimate, legal, nothing to do with the darker parts of his empire. But working for Salvatore meant proximity to his world, and Nora quickly realized that years of serving dangerous people while staying invisible had given her a unique skill set. She noticed things. Small things. Inconsistencies in schedules. People who avoided eye contact. Money that moved strangely through accounts. 2 months into her job, she mentioned casually to Salvatore that one of his senior managers kept taking calls in the stairwell and his phone records didn't match his locations. She didn't think much of it. She was just making conversation. Salvatore's expression went cold as winter. He investigated. Quietly. Carefully. And he discovered that the attack on his son hadn't been random. It had been orchestrated from inside his own organization by people he'd trusted for years. People who thought a grieving father would be vulnerable. People who were wrong. The purge was swift and silent. 1 week later, 3 senior members of Salvatore's organization simply vanished from their positions. No drama. No explanation. Just gone. Salvatore called Nora to his office on a Friday evening. The city glittered below them, all lights and possibilities. "You saved my son's life," he said quietly. "Not at the hospital. Here. Your observation stopped a second attempt that was being planned. You didn't just return money, Nora. You gave me back my future." Nora didn't know what to say. She'd just been doing her job, using skills learned from years of survival. 6 months passed. Danny's health improved dramatically with proper medical care. Nora's apartment was warm and safe. She slept without fear of eviction notices. Life became something other than constant survival. Then Salvatore made another move that shocked everyone. He acquired a chain of restaurants, including Sal's Diner, the place where this entire story began. And he promoted Nora to general manager of all his restaurant properties. 23 years old and suddenly overseeing dozens of locations and hundreds of employees. Her first day in the new position, she walked into Sal's Diner wearing a clean suit instead of a stained uniform. The staff stared. Jenny's mouth fell open. And Frank, her old manager who'd fired her, turned white as the cheap napkins. "Miss Blake," he stammered. "I didn't realize. I mean, if I'd known." Nora could have destroyed him. Everyone expected her to. The other staff watched with anticipation, waiting for revenge served cold and justified. Instead, Nora extended her hand. "Mr. Torres, I'm looking forward to working with you. I know running a restaurant is hard work. I hope we can make this location successful together." Frank looked like he might cry. "You're not firing me?" "No. But I expect you to treat every employee with respect. Everyone deserves dignity regardless of their circumstances. Can you do that?" "Yes. Yes, absolutely." Later, Jenny cornered Nora in the back. "Why didn't you fire him? After what he did to you?" "Because being cruel when you have power makes you the same as people who were cruel when they had power over you." Nora looked around the diner that had once been her entire world. "I want to be better than that." Few months later, Nora received an invitation that made her heart race. Heavy cardstock, elegant script. An address in the hills where only the truly powerful lived. Salvatore was inviting her to his home. The mansion sat behind iron gates that opened silently as her car approached. Security cameras tracked her movement up the long driveway lined with ancient oak trees. The house itself looked like something from a different era, all stone and glass and impossible wealth. Nora had managed his restaurants for months now, had proven herself a dozen times over, but stepping into Salvatore's private world felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. A butler answered the door and led her through hallways decorated with art that probably cost more than her childhood home. They passed rooms filled with leather and mahogany, spaces that whispered of old money and older secrets. Finally, they reached a terrace that overlooked the city, and there was Salvatore, standing at the edge with his hands in his pockets, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Nora." He turned and smiled, genuine warmth in his eyes. "Thank you for coming. Your home is beautiful. It's just a house." He gestured to a table set for 2, candles flickering in the evening breeze. "I wanted somewhere private to talk. Away from offices and restaurants and people who are always watching." They sat and staff appeared with wine and food that Nora couldn't begin to identify. The conversation started carefully, professionally. Updates about the restaurants. Danny's progress in school. Marco's acceptance to 3 different colleges. Safe topics that kept them in their designated roles of employer and employee. But as the sun set and the city lights began to twinkle below them like fallen stars, something shifted. "Do you ever regret it?" Salvatore asked suddenly. That night. Returning the money. Everything that came after. Nora considered the question seriously. "No. But sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I'd kept it. If I'd made the easy choice instead of the right one." "You'd be someone else. Someone lesser." Salvatore leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "I've spent this entire year trying to understand you. Trying to find the angle, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. Because in my world, everyone wants something. Everyone has a price. And did you find it?" My price. No. The word came out rough, almost frustrated. You're exactly who you appeared to be that night. Honest. Brave. Impossibly good in a world that punishes goodness. I'm not that special, Salvatore. You're wrong. He reached across the table and took her hand, and the touch sent electricity up her arm. You walked into a hospital surrounded by armed men to return money to someone who terrified you. You gave up everything for integrity. You could have destroyed Frank but chose mercy instead. You see people, Nora. Really see them. Not what they can do for you or how you can use them. You see their humanity. Nora's breath caught. This wasn't employer and employee anymore. This was something else entirely, something dangerous and thrilling and terrifying. I see yours too, she whispered. The man who loves his son enough to sit in a hospital and fall apart. Who gives opportunities to waitresses who have nothing. Who builds legitimate businesses because he wants to be more than what people expect. You make me want to be better. Salvatore's thumb traced circles on her palm. You make me believe I can be better. They moved from the table to the edge of the terrace, the city sprawling below them like a carpet of light. Nora felt dizzy from wine and possibility and the way Salvatore looked at her like she was something precious and rare. I set up a trust for Danny, Salvatore said quietly. Full ride to any college he wants. Medical expenses covered for life. Before you argue, it's already done. You can't give it back. Salvatore. You gave me my son's life, Nora. You noticed what no one else saw. You stopped a second attack. You think I could ever repay that with money? His voice broke slightly. You walked into my world and reminded me what I was fighting to protect. What kind of legacy I wanted to leave. What kind of man I wanted Marco to see when he looked at his father. Tears burned in Nora's eyes. I just did what anyone would do. No. Salvatore turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. That's exactly the point. You did what almost no one would do. You chose right over easy. Honor over survival. Truth over safety. And you did it when you had every reason to make a different choice. They stood there in the candlelight and the city glow, two people from impossible different worlds, connected by one honest moment that had rippled into something neither could have predicted. I don't fit in your life, Nora said softly. I don't know your world. I'm just a waitress who got lucky. You're the woman who changed everything. Salvatore's hand came up to cup her cheek. You're the one person in this city I trust completely. The only one who sees me as something more than a title or a threat. You make me believe in second chances. Salvatore. His name was a breath, a question, a surrender. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, to remember all the reasons this was complicated and dangerous and impossible. But Nora didn't pull away. She rose on her toes and met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question being asked and answered. Then it deepened, and Nora felt a year of tension and unspoken feelings pour into that moment. Salvatore's arms came around her, strong and sure, and she felt safe in a way she'd never experienced before. Protected. Cherished. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Salvatore rested his forehead against hers. I don't know how this works, he admitted. I don't know how to be what you deserve. Neither do I, Nora whispered. But maybe we figure it out together. They stood there on the terrace, wrapped in each other's arms, the city glittering below them like a promise. A mafia boss and a waitress. A powerful man who'd learned about honor from someone who had nothing. A struggling woman who'd discovered that integrity could change not just one life but two. I want to tell you something very important. Your character isn't defined by what you do when people are watching. It's defined by what you do when you're desperate, alone, and no one would ever find out. Nora had every reason to keep that money. She was being evicted, her brother needed medicine, she'd just lost her job. But she returned it anyway, not because it was easy, but because it wasn't hers to keep. That one honest decision changed her entire life. But she didn't do it expecting a reward. She did it because her integrity mattered more than her circumstances. Here's the truth. Your reputation is what people think of you. Your character is who you are when nobody's looking. And your character will always determine your destiny. Do the right thing even when it costs you everything. Because integrity isn't just about being honest. It's about being able to sleep at night knowing you stayed true to yourself when the world gave you every excuse not to. One honest choice can change your life forever. Choose integrity over convenience. Choose character over comfort. That's how you build a life worth living. Thank you for watching this story. Please subscribe and let me know your thoughts on this story.